I think 2011 is going to be a year of change. That may sound good to contractors who have been suffering through the last 2 years, but in fact it's really a more mixed answer. Certainly private construction has nowhere to go but up, and I think we will see some significant improvement starting probably with the multifamily rental market. That market has been one of the worst hit, and now that we've had 12 straight months of private sector employment gains and prospects getting even brighter for larger employment gains in 2011, a lot more people are going to be in the market for renting their own place instead of doubling up with a roommate they're tired of or living with mom and dad. On the non-residential private construction side, I think there are also some signs of hope. We've already seen a number of announcements of hospitals that are breaking ground or starting up funding campaigns, maybe tapping the bond market, something they weren't able to do in 2008 and early 2009. And there's definitely pent-up demand for modernization and new construction for hospitals. I think we're also going to see some improvement early on in the warehouse market. There's still plenty of vacant warehouse space, but it's relatively cheap to tilt up 4 walls and put inside the most modern retrieval and storage equipment. And with sales both domestically and exports and imports all growing at significant clips, I think more and more companies are going to be looking for new warehouse space. I think the hotel market is also on the verge of picking up and has started to do so in some areas. We've had 7 or 8 months now of very positive improvement in room rates, occupancy rates, and revenue per available room, or RevPAR, and that's really what makes hoteliers go back to the market to say, all right, it's time to spruce up the lobby, to put new amenities in the guest room, maybe expand or even break ground on a new hotel. Another category that may start doing better is the private college and university market, and of course that's a significant market in pockets of Maine, and there are a lot of colleges that had fairly extensive construction plans up through 2008, and then when the market collapsed and the economy turned sour, they had to shelve those plans. Well, now that the stock market has come back pretty strongly, and they have access to bond markets at very low interest rates, a lot of colleges, I think, are ready to resume construction. Some of the bigger private non-residential markets, though, look as if they're likely to hold off until 2012. The single-family construction market has really been a disappointment in the second half of 2011, in the second half of 2010. I'm just not sure when that will pick up speed. And then on the non-residential side, the office and retail markets still look pretty dormant. There's so much vacant space, including in the office area, so-called shadow space, where companies have let go employees without moving into smaller quarters. So as they begin to hire, initially they'll be able to put them into spaces in their own office and not go out and buy or lease new space. The manufacturing market may start to pick up, but I think that's going to be kind of industry by industry. Overall, manufacturing industrial production is still well below historical average levels, but we're starting to see more and more announcements of companies that are building new plants for things like advanced batteries or wind turbine components, and so I think that will gradually improve. Turning to public construction, this is where I think we may see the negative side of all change. That frankly the federal government really has kept a lot of contractors afloat in the last couple of years. Dating back to the Base Realignment and Closure Commission of 2005, you've had BRAC projects in certain parts of the country that have greatly added to the amount of work going on at those bases. Now others will be closing, but even the bases that have been building up, that work is supposed to finish in 2011. and that means the contractors who've been on base may be scrambling to find new work. On the other hand, as the bases take on new employees and new contractors or others in the surrounding community, there will be especially strong demand in those areas for rental housing, for stores, and for some other civilian facilities. But the most widespread federal program that's helped contractors was the Recovery Act of 2009, the stimulus legislation. That's a very complex piece of legislation. AGC counted 61 separate programs totaling about $135 billion in construction funds, and some of that money has been fully obligated. In particular, the highway funds have all been put under contract, and much of it has already been paid out to contractors. The rest, I think, will be paid in 2011. After that, we're likely to see a big drop-off in highway funding. Similarly, water and wastewater got a big boost both from the stimulus and from the 2009 appropriations bill. That's under contract already, not likely to be repeated. It may take a little longer to spend out, but once it's gone, I think those categories will also shrink. The General Services Administration got $5.5 billion to renovate federal office buildings and courthouses, and that money is almost all under contract as well. The bids came in so low that they were able to add 17 projects to their list, but again, once they've put that out, I think they're going to be cut back pretty severely given the change in Congress and in the President's own rhetoric. So federal funding is going to continue at a pretty strong level in most of 2011 in certain categories of construction, but after that drop quite sharply. Meanwhile, state governments have started to see a pickup in their own tax revenues, but the boost that they got from stimulus is not going to be repeated, and to the extent they are able to fund more things, I think they're going to be putting it into restoring some of the programs they had to cut, bring workers who were furloughed back to full hours, and maybe start addressing pension plan underfunding. That means construction will be at best their fourth priority, and I'm not sure any states are going to be able to get to the fourth priority on their list. At the local government level, it's even worse, because local governments and school districts depend so heavily on property tax receipts, and those revenues have been hit hard by the decline in property values, which is still continuing, and also by the rise in delinquencies and defaults that affects not just mortgages, but in many cases the property tax payments as well. So to bring it all together, I do see some signs of life in the private non-residential and multifamily rental markets. I think slowly we'll get more improvement in non-residential and in single family, but it's going to come just about the same time that the public construction drops off. So taking 2011 as a whole, I think private and public non-residential construction put together will be up by only about 5%, and residential construction may be up 5 to 10%, which means all of construction somewhere between 3 and 7%. That sounds good, but there are two caveats. First, it's off a very low base in 2010, and second, some of that will be eaten up by materials cost increases.